When you look at March the 4th, the outlook for the Italian election could actually prove difficult to form a government. It's unclear exactly what the polls suggest. The polls in the past have been wrong. Do you worry that this election could be disruptive to reforms?
Listen, nobody knows what's going to happen, so let's start with that. I am positive and I'm optimistic, and the reason why I'm positive and optimistic in terms of continuing the reform path, of course, is because the current polls have something like 40 to 45% of abstention rate, which is huge. Now, those voters who at the moment say that they're not going to vote are potentially moderate voters. They're not extremist voters. So if the moderate parties manage in this month of campaign to bring a portion of those voters to the polls, I think they're going to be, more moderate voters, and therefore the chances of getting a coalition between the centrist parties, a center-left and center-right, become much higher. And in that sense, the reform path will continue.
Okay, what kind of new reforms does Italy need to deal with unemployment, especially youth unemployment?
I think that more than reform, I think we need to simplify the investment process, and therefore a lot of reforms that go towards simplifying the bureaucracy are essential. And then the other, I think, major reform that has to be done in Italy is justice. Something has already been done, but too little at the moment, and we need a radical reform there in order to really give certainty of the right. And I think we can get there.
But that requires what kind of government? I mean, is it just a will? Does it have to come from the people? Does it have to come from businessmen putting pressure on whatever government is to push through that way?
I think it's already pretty clear in the minds of the current majority and the current government which reforms have to continue. So if there is going to be continuity, the presence of the Democratic Party is essential. And I think that people on the center-right, on the moderate side of the center-right, will also go along.
Mr. Costamagna, talk to me a little bit about the banking system. But actually, we've talked about the banking system when you were in London last time. But there are a lot of proposals from the EU asking a little bit more of, levels of provisioning being higher. This drew a lot of criticism from the Italian banking landscape. Is it justified?
Well, the Italian banks are saying that they've done already a lot in that respect. We know that the old system was starting from a higher level than other countries because, the recession in Italy has been much stronger than in other countries in Europe. And therefore, the level of NPLs, by definition, has increased. Now, the economy is doing much better. And of course, when the economy goes better, we have the different trend. And they don't want to be sort of pushed around by doing something more than what they are already doing. I think that the old banking system is in much better shape than it was 12 months ago, mainly for two reasons. One has been the rights issue of Unicredit, which was a massive rights issue and who sort of put Unicredit into security, let's say. And secondly, the intervention of the state on Monte dei Paschi and partially on the Venetian Bank, which has allowed Intesa to take over the Venetian banks. And those were really the major issues. All the other banks are pretty much in a decent shape.
But if these new EU rules take shape and be implemented, will lending be hurt? And this is something that Italy needs to be careful about.
I don't think so, because I think that the measure that will be taken by the banks as a response to ECB will be to be more aggressive in selling down NPLs, which eventually will free up capital for lending.
Okay. Is there a level playing field with Italian banks compared to the rest? Does there need to be more consolidation in Italy? Are there too many banks?
There are too many banks, but there are also a lot of small banks which are, at the end of the day, not really relevant. I mean, they are very local. Remember, Italy is a very fragmented country. Historically, and therefore, local banks, are always going to be there. Now, there are clearly still, 3 or 4 major transactions that might happen in terms of consolidation. But, as of now, I don't see any one of those happening, in the next 3 to 6 months. But eventually, yes.
Claudio Costamagna, do you see CDP actually taking a role in the eventual sale and restructuring of Alitalia?
At the moment, no. I think that there is a process going on. I think the good news is that there is, very strong interest from, Lufthansa, from Air France, from EasyJet. So there is going to be some competition. Now, if one of those potential buyers will ask to have some support, some institutional support from us, we're ready to talk to anybody. But for the time being, we are not part of the process.
What's it like, Davos today?
Well,
I mean, it seems that everyone's waiting for the
president. This week has been incredibly optimistic. Everybody is very bullish. Listen, I'm also bullish, but at the same time, when I see too much optimism going around, I get scared. So I don't know. We'll see.